What's up everybody, Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Neat Freak video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down that top 8 Webtoon slash Manhwa that you absolutely need to be reading in 2021. These are just the most entertaining, the best of the best, and I absolutely love each and every one of these. And if you're not reading these, you absolutely need to be reading them right now. And I'm going to be breaking them down and telling you why you're really missing out if you're not reading these in 2021. But before we get started, keep in mind, I'm not going to be including a lot of the big mainstream heavy hitter Webtoons or manhwas, things like Tower of God, Solo Leveling, Unordinary, things that most people know about. I'm not going to be including all of those, and I might talk about those in future videos, but for now, I really want to just showcase some ones that you probably haven't heard of or you haven't read, and these are ones that I've stumbled upon that I just really love to death. So kicking it off with number 8, we got to talk about How to Fight. Now, the story stars our young high schooler named Hobin, and Hobin is gonna get bullied. He gets bullied every single day, and you really relate to the character of Hobin because he's a frail guy. He is just not someone that is going to be outgoing or anything like that, and he's getting bullied by people in his class. But the interesting thing about the world is it all centers around this thing called NewTube, which is kind of like a combination of Twitch and YouTube put together. There's like YouTube videos or NewTube videos that pop up, and those go viral and they get money from those. And then of course there is like the live streaming aspect where there's people like walking around in school with like, you know, cameras on sticks and they're showing their everyday life. And it's kind of funny because it really parallels, you know, the YouTube space, the Twitch space, but to the extreme. Like people are really like showing on a fake front, and it really shows that one of his bullies is actually someone that live streams and shows himself as this really nice guy, but behind the scenes he's like a big bully. Anyways, Hobin's mom is sick, and this just kind of ties in to a lot of the reasoning for what he does later on, which what happens is basically he gets pushed to a certain point where he just like has to fight back, and of course he's just gonna get beat down. But he stumbles upon this YouTube channel that no one knows about. Shredded guy, literally jacked, with a chicken helmet, right? A chicken mask. And this guy is going to teach him, or the videos are literally specifically designed to teach someone who doesn't know how to fight at all, give him what he needs to at least defend himself and even win fights when he's up against people that are much stronger than him, much bigger than him. And he ends up winning a fight. He wins a fight, and then that gets caught on camera and it just goes viral. It blows up and it kickstarts his career as a YouTuber. And now all of a sudden he's making tons of money and he can afford the medical bills from his mom, and it just cascades from there. And it's just a really hilarious, awesome, there's less fighting, but it's just like, it's more of a comedy than anything, but very, very enjoyable. Like one of the most enjoyable ones that I would highly suggest, but definitely go check that out. Now, kicking it off to the number 7, I really wanted to talk about Overgeared. Now, Overgeared takes place in a virtual reality game, a VMORPG called Satisfy, which is like the most popular game in the world. It's an extremely popular game, and if you're really, really good at this game or you go really far, you can make a living off of it, you can sell your items, you can make the big bucks. It's just that big of a game. And, of course, the protagonist is someone who kind of no-lifes this game. His name is Shin Young-woo, and he goes by Grid in game. Anyways, he stumbles upon this special object that he wants to sell because his family is really poor, he's really poor, and you know, he doesn't have a lot of self-worth, but he wants to make some money, so he just wants to sell it off. But he accidentally activates it and he becomes this thing called Pagmar's Descendant. And basically what that means is he gets a class change. He restarts his character and gets a new class. Now, the thing about his new class, though, is he's a special kind of blacksmith. And you might be thinking, okay, blacksmith, what does that matter? Well, in this universe, not a lot of people want to be a blacksmith in the games. Like, there's guilds, big, well-developed guilds that I'll talk about in a second, but no one wants to be a blacksmith. But he is the special type of blacksmith that not only allows him to make these amazing, insane weapons, just whatever he can think of, he can design and make, but he can actually equip weapons that are extremely far or just unlimited level of higher than him. So it's like if you were like a level 1 character in like an RPG, an MMORPG, and you could put on like a level 100 suit of armor, you would have all the stats, but there's like a giant stat decrease for putting on this armor. But it doesn't matter if the object you put on is so overpowered. Even with the stat decrease, it doesn't matter. But he basically works his way up using this. He really starts to climb the ladder in the game, becoming more and more powerful, becoming more and more known when he's just like making these like amazing weapons, and it kind of cascades into his entire life because he starts making money and things like that. But it's a really, really fun read. If you're looking for something that is not too serious, pretty lighthearted, but extremely fun, very well done. I know the VMORPG, like, you know, going into a game thing has been done again and again with like the Legend of the Moonlight Sculptor. And I mean, if you think about anime, traditional anime like Sword Art Online and things like that, but this just does it in such a unique way. And it's just so well drawn. It's very entertaining. Highly, highly suggest it. One of my favorites so far this year. Now, the next webtoon I wanted to talk about, and it's an actual webtoon on the Webtoon app, it's called It's Mine. And this one is a trip. So I'm not going to talk about it too much. I'm not going to go too into it because right off the bat, you get into spoiler territory. I want to leave it completely, you know, fresh read. You get into it, you just read it as is. I would highly suggest actually not looking up a lot about this and reading it anyways. But basically, it stars this person named Yuhan Do, and he's crushing on a girl, right? And he will do anything to protect this girl. And I mean anything. And I mean anything. And pretty much from there, this guy starts to do things that are, the protagonist starts to do things that might be stepping the line from being a protector to maybe being a stalker. And I'm not going to give away any more from there. But if you're into thrillers, mysteries, and you have no idea what's going on until later on, I suggest reading it. It's an amazing read. Definitely give it a try. I don't want to give away any more than that because I just don't want to spoil anything, because it's best to just get that first time read and all that surprises to go with it. But now let's move on to the fifth one. This is another webtoon. In fact, the next two, this one and the next one, are all going to be webtoons on the Webtoon app. But this one's called Weak Hero. Some of you might have already read this because it's a pretty well-known one, but I thought I had to give it credit here. They just finished one of the seasons right now, and Weak Hero's amazing. It stars a person named Gray who had a bad past. He had a really troubled past. There was some things that happened. I'm not going to go into it, but he's basically like a star student, and at one point he ended up learning to use his like analytic mind to actually fight against bullies. Now, the way he does this is really, really brutal. It's like if you were someone who is not very strong, right? You're small, you're getting in fights with people are constantly picking on you. And you can't deal with it. You went through some trauma. You're just like emotionally just like done with all the bullying. And you do crazy stuff like strangle people with their own sweaters, or out of nowhere stab people with pencils, out of nowhere just do the most insane thing that will guarantee you're winning a fight. Because like in a street fight, there's no rules, right? And this guy, he thinks about the ways that people will react to how he moves. He thinks about what people will think when he says one thing. He thinks about how to win at all costs, whether that means smashing someone's head, like wrapping someone in a blanket and smashing their head against, you know, like a dumpster or whatever he has to do, he'll do it. He's not a bad guy. He's just someone that has been pushed so far based on his past that he's willing to do this thing. But he actually builds connections with people at his school. He builds friends, and there's even a bigger thing where there's like this one guy that is really running. It's like a lot of gang rivalry type stuff and fights and things like that, but it gets much, much bigger. Really well developed story, amazing story, and the protagonist and all the surrounding characters, so much great backstory goes into all of them, and all the fights are amazing, really entertaining, and I cannot see where it goes from here. I'm just extremely excited, and it's just a really, really fun read. If you're into action, into fighting, you're gonna love it. And it honestly, the main character alone, he's just someone that pretty much anyone will like. Yeah, it's just great. Now moving on to actually not the last webtoon, but one of the last ones for a little while until we get to the number one on our list. Spoiler alert, that's on the actual Webtoon app, but this is called My Deepest Secret. Now this is another one that is thriller, kind of like It's Mine, and I can't talk about it too much because I can't spoil it. There's a lot of layers to this, and I'm not going to talk about it too much, but it's just one that I would highly suggest don't do a lot of research on. Just go read. You got some time, just go read it. It is absolutely amazing. Like, Basically, what this happens is there's this girl named Emma, and she's like a really bright girl. Everyone likes her in school, and she has a boyfriend named Elios. I think his name is Elios. I think that's how you pronounce it. And he's just a very, very loving boyfriend. But behind the scenes, he's a little bit psycho. He's a little bit overprotective. He really, really loves her, and you might get some similar vibes to It's Mine, but I promise you the story is so different. I can't even get to how, but there's just plot twist on plot twist. It's another thriller. It's like high stakes. You're really thinking about what's happening. They just finished their season, and you should read this. It really, if you like thriller at all, read this 100%. Number 4 on our list, My Deepest Secret. Now, let's talk about 3. These are the top 3 on the list. These are the ones that I'm most excited about. They're the most well-made and well-polished, and these are the ones that I would highly suggest a lot of people read because I really am excited. Now, the third one is an interesting one. It's called Mercenary Enrollment. Now, it stars a person named Yu, and basically what happened to this person is he was flying in a plane with his parents, right? He has a sister. His sister was staying at home, and he was flying in this plane, and the plane goes down. It crashes, and his parents die, and everyone thought that he died too, but he didn't, and he landed in like a battleground. Now, we don't really know where this place is from what I remember. You would kind of think it's somewhere like the Middle East, like Afghanistan or somewhere like that. We don't really know, but somewhere where it's an active war zone is where he landed. Anyways, he was literally raised, kind of like how child soldiers are raised, but he was raised by like mercenaries to do mercenary tasks. And most of the time, all these kids die, but he didn't die. He just kept on growing up while he was learning to be a mercenary from a very young age. So he's just like extremely trained, and that's how he made a living. That's how he survived, is by doing mercenary work, hired work in the middle of a battlefield. And this is like with real guns and stuff like that. So he learned things like, survival instincts, fighting, combat, how to use guns and things like that. But anyways, he ends up saving some, I'm guessing Korean troops, because this is a webtoon, but he saved some troops, and like he was just like a machine. And the guy that he saved, he was just like in awe of this kid who was like a very young kid, just like things going on, crazy explosions happening on the battlefield, and he's just right back to shooting, right back in the action. He never stopped. And he saw this kid, and he basically rescued him. He's like, you're Korean, you don't belong here. And he rescued him. And then he gave him like a crash course on the real world, because remember, this kid is, grown up as a mercenary. He doesn't know anything. So he gave him a crash course, and then he comes back and he gets reunited with his grandfather, and of course, I believe it's his grandfather and his sister. And it's a really, like, parts of it are kind of cliche. Some of it goes overboard a little bit, but it is just such an amazing read. It's very exciting. There's only 12 chapters out right now, maybe 13 by the time you see this video, but it's just one of those that it's very well written. It's a very fresh, like, I consider this one that has a lot of potential. There is a ton of potential in this one. I'm not going to say the most potential, because that's definitely our number 1 on the list. You're going to have to stay tuned till then. But it is definitely a really, really exciting read. It's unique. It doesn't have like any superpowers or anything. I mean, a guy that is almost superhuman because of what he knows, but there's no magic or anything like that. But it's very exciting. I would highly suggest you give it a read. And if you're into anything like that, any of that sounded at least a little bit interesting, give it a couple chapters, and yeah. But let's talk about number 2, and this is probably the most mainstream on the list so far. You might have already heard this before, but I have to talk about it because it's by far, like, just one of the most polished, really, really polished, and it's called Omniscient Reader Viewpoint. So some of you might already know this one, but it stars Kim Dokja. Sorry. This channel is going to pronounce everything wrong, I promise you. Anyways, he's this 28-year-old guy that what he does in his pastime is just read web novels all the time. So, pretty similar to us, except we read webtoons all the time. And he reads this web novel called The World After the Fall. And it's like this one that only he reads. It's being consistently uploaded. It's a very long, I think it had like 1,000+ like chapters, just consistent. It's like someone just keeps uploading and uploading and uploading, and he's like the one guy that reads it. He's the one guy that reads this story. And it's like this crazy story of all this stuff happening. Anyways, out of nowhere, he finishes it, and then boom, all of a sudden this crazy earthquake happens, and there's now just like this random avatar that pops up and says, you have to fight, you have to murder a living being to stay alive. Reward this coins. And it's like a game almost, with objectives in the real world, and there's like real consequences. And he's seen this before. He's seen it all before, because this is literally the exact plot of the actual novel that he's been reading the entire time. Now, you might say that this is a pretty cliche plot, maybe so, but it really, really is well done. So well done. It combines like gaming aspects into it, really well developed characters with different motivations, really well thought out plot. We don't even know where it's going to go from here, but it's just a really, really amazing read so far. Like I said, one of the most polished, it is the most polished out of all of these here, and it's something that I think everyone can enjoy, and I would highly suggest giving it at least 10 chapters. You can find it on Webtoons, or you can find it on other sources as well. Other sources will probably have more chapters, but either way, the Webtoon is going to catch up to it eventually. Now, that being said, we got to talk about number one. And this is number one, in my opinion, by a mile. This one kind of came out of nowhere because it started off with a pretty cliche plot, if I'm being honest, and it just evolved into something completely different, a completely different animal, and it's called The Boxer. Now, if you haven't heard about this, find some new friends, because you should have heard it. No, I'm just kidding. You need to be the one to tell your friends about The Boxer, because The Boxer is absolutely amazing. It's something that it starts off with people. I can't really tell you who the main character is, because there's a lot of changing characters. It stars one person, and then it stars another person, and the person you think is the protagonist is going to be the protagonist for like 20 chapters, and then it moves on to someone else that's his rival and their motivations. And it's not a story about boxing. I know it's called The Boxer, but it's more about the motivations that drive people. It's about what makes someone feel. The main character, the true main character, or one of the true main characters, he's basically like the all-star talented boxer. He is beyond talent. I mean, he's just unstoppable, and he feels nothing. And that's maybe part of the reason why he's so good at boxing, is because he doesn't feel emotion. He doesn't feel anything when he's winning. When he doesn't lose, but when he's winning, he doesn't feel anything. But when he sees some people show a certain spark of dedication and motivation combined, it might make him feel something a little bit. And this is really just a story where it'll spend like 20 chapters building a narrative or building up the protagonist, only to switch and build up the storyline from someone else entirely, and you'll see how the stories interconnect. And I can't even wait to see what this story will evolve into, but it's just really amazing. I highly suggest that you got to read The Boxer, and every single one of these I love for different reasons, and it was hard to pick this 8 list. There's so many to talk about, and there's some more that I need to talk about in the future. I'm going to make an entire video over the beginning after the end, which is one of my favorites right now. An honorable mention here would be like, I think it's called Blue Hearts. There's just a whole bunch of them that I really love right now. But definitely let me know which of these you really loved. And of course, any suggestions, put them in the comments down below. I might have read them and I plan to save them for future videos. Definitely let me know what you think about that. Thank you so much for coming by. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please smash that like and subscribe if you did enjoy it. And see you next time.